you need to remind yourself too that at certain points in your career, you were tasked with something that in the back of your mind, you're like, I can't believe they're asking me to do this and are giving me this trust and this capacity to go execute. How cool. And they have a special moment. And if you don't succeed, well, your career's going the wrong way at that moment.
I'm Billy Ryan, and this is the No One Is Watching podcast, where we explore high-performing teams, individuals, and leaders, and dig deep to find out what makes them tick. This show highlights the DNA shared by elite performers, the process by which they leverage that talent, and ultimately helps you apply those lessons to your own life, business, or team. Did you grow up a big sports fan as a kid?
I did. As they say in Philly, 4 for 4, but I like to say 5 for 5 with the Union, who first place. Not too many people are talking MLS, I assume, but looking really good. But we'll see on the Phillies. I think losing Wheeler, not to get too deep into baseball, but that's tough. That's going to be tough.
That's hard, man. He's been incredible, especially in the postseason. So that's a tough one to swallow for sure. What was your favorite memory as a kid growing up? I mean, I grew up in Boston, so it's a lot of parallels between Philly and Boston and sort of the maniacal fandom. What's some of your favorite memories as a kid growing up?
I was part of the, kind of your Charles Barkley, Randall Cunningham, Mike Schmidt, but also I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they understand championships and they see winning and they go to parades and they don't have to go to this parade. And so, man, getting to feel that, and because I was 3 weeks old when the Phillies won in 1980, and then to wait till 2008, there's Phillies fans are obviously very passionate. I think misunderstood at times. I think you hear that about Boston, you hear that about New York, but man, do they know the game, and do they really care? And at times that drive that, but having some Super Bowls and World Series, it's been real fun the last few years.
Yeah, you don't know any better when you're growing up, right? I grew up in New England and went to college down south, and have kind of been in the South longer than I have been in the North now. So it's SEC football country, and it's a different, similar passion, but a different, manifested in a different way. But I remember when my wife and I were dating, I took her to I think this was when I was at the commissioner's office, took her to like a random Red Sox Blue Jays game in Boston on like a Tuesday night. It was kind of like a nothing game. And it was, 9-4 in the 8th inning or whatever. And the place is still full. And she kind of looks around like, everybody's still here. Why? And I'm like, yes, people care, right? Like, people are invested.
Yeah.
College sports don't play the same role they do in the South, but just like the NFL, the pro sports, it's just such a big part of the culture, especially sort of in that I-95 corridor, and the ones that can do it with a stadium downtown. I mean, I grew up at Fenway. That's a whole different level of like atmosphere in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too deep into Philly specifically, but it's been a hot topic, hotbed for the last couple of years now of, what's going to happen to the Wells Fargo Center, now Xfinity Center. Are the Sixers going to move? And for now, it looks like things are staying in place. And who knows? The Eagles are talking about a new stadium, but having 4 professional teams in literally the same parking lot, it's really special. It's very few cities have what Philadelphia has, and so I think we really cherish that, and it's pretty awesome to sometimes you literally can hop from a baseball game to a basketball game or a hockey. Like, it's awesome. It's so cool.
Yeah. I always thought it was cool that the Royals and the Chiefs are right next to each other with a shared parking lot. But yeah, you have all 4 there. That's such an impact to a city. Right? I was with the Braves I wasn't when I was with them when the stadium opened, but I wasn't with them when they announced it, leaving downtown. And that was, people were losing their minds. We're taking the Braves out of Atlanta, and they're not going that far up the road, but it's no longer the heart of the city. It's a little bit more the suburbs, and they've done an incredible job. Right now, it's sort of a model in a lot of ways for other franchises as they build these sort of live, work, play environments. But And
Absolutely.
so,
We were talking about the Battery yesterday of
were
just
you?
how it's this, you have mixed use, right? You have the condos and the apartments and the retail and a lot of live work type environment. And, I'm sure some people wish the Braves were still downtown, but I think it's a pretty cool model for other teams to replicate.
Well, and it's, look, you can't. Who's to say you can't do that downtown, right? If the stars align, you find the right land, and you can make it work. That wasn't going to happen in Atlanta necessarily, but yeah, it's just, I mean, people, the landscape's changed, right? Like you're not gonna. I mean, some people would, I would, but hop a train and just go to the ball game and not do anything else, and then go home, right? Like people want to make a big, make sort of event out of it, have sort of a little bit more diversification in their entertainment dollars, right? So, it's smart. It's smart what they did. They did a really well, did a really good job with it. So what got like sports fan Philly, the whole thing? What was the appeal to you with venture capital? Like what? I know you did a bunch before you got into that space. So what was it specifically that appealed to you, and how did you get into that world?
Look, I think Billy I'm truly blessed. I had the passion similar to you, athlete, play sports. You start, well, you went much further than I did, but you start to realize, you know, this isn't going to be my career. I am not going to make my living on the field, on the court. So then I think that natural progression is how do I stay close to the game, or how do I use some of my network, my access to help me in my career? And so you start thinking about, well, what does a career look like working in sports? And the other piece to me in college and undergrad, growing up, working odd jobs, hustling, trying to make a buck, it's that like entrepreneurial mindset. And I say blessed because wow, to get to invest in sports-based companies across the latest technology and backing unbelievable entrepreneurs that are so talented and just so rare in their skill set and what they get to do. It's incredible. And and to me, it's the closest thing that you get to playing sports still in the business setting. So much about the hard work, the dedication, the risk, the reward. You're not punching in and punching out. This is a full contact 24/7. The wins can be defined by how the companies do, how our investments do, how we do as 76 Capital from a growth standpoint, how we think of ourselves as, an entrepreneurial business, as an investment company, not, a VC that sits there and occasionally writes a check and says, every quarter, let us know how, this to us is, we are all in. We are all in with our capital. We are all in with everything we're doing to add value. And it's really special and really unique. But how did I get here? It was, I had a passion for sports and I had a passion for business, and I was very lucky, and I worked hard to get to marry the two.
Sure, sure. Have you? What's the landscape been for you since you've been in investing? You guys are one of the few that were hyper focused on the sports sector, right? Before it, I mean, it's hot now. Certainly 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, you probably couldn't say that. And there's a rabbit hole, we could go down with that, but how much of that I have a little bit of startup experience, and that was fun because you kind of put your athlete hat back on a little bit, right? You're like, let's go. We're working out in the basement, in the off season kind of thing, that mentality, right? And how much of that do you see on a day to day across the portfolio companies you have, or the ones that you're researching, right? That athlete sort of mentality, whether the person's an athlete or not is irrelevant, but just sort of that mentality.
Eh, Absolutely. Like to us, you don't have to be an athlete, but you have to embrace and think like and be able to perform. And so many people think they're the best, right? And then they get to college and they look around the locker room like, wow, he or she is just as fast, just as strong, just as talented. And to be so fortunate to get to go to the next level, and you're in the same clubhouse and you're looking around thinking, this is crazy, he or she, right? Similar. And you just, every single level, well, it's very similar in business. You talk about someone that has certain traits and characteristics and attributes. And for us, we're looking for that not the one percenter, but the 0.0001, right? Like who is the true MVP in business? And as you see, it's not about, and it's so much about, like, I love your podcast and your guests, and it's about the work that's done when no one's watching, right? Like, right? Not to but it is.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
what's happening, and the little things add up to massive wins. And it's not just about the solo entrepreneur that says I'm the best. I think, Musk is very polarizing, and I think one thing you have to say about it is like genius to be able to build the companies and to do. But I often remind people like he's not on an island. He's done that with teams and work, and there's so many people that have made PayPal and this one and Tesla, like so many, these
That's
companies are
part of the
built with
genius in my mind,
teams, like, I,
right?
right? So like, but I think too often people look at like the solo person and like it takes a team to win. And I think that's what we go for at 76 Capital. How do we back the best founders, the best teams, the best, person or two that can put the team together? And that's really where venture gets complicated and crazy. And, you start early, but how do you make it to be this big success? It's super hard.
Yeah, I want to dive deeper on that because it's interesting to me because I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about this. Athletes are the obvious example, but you can look at it. You can look at musicians, actors, businessmen, whoever. It's just anybody that's in a very visible, high performing space, and it's very easy to look at those people and say that person is a different species than me, right? Like I just cannot relate to that level of pressure, accomplishment, competition, achievement, you name it, right? And then you start talking to that individual. I've been blessed to be around some people that have done some incredible things, or they're in history books, and you talk to them, and it's just getting back to your earlier point. Yeah, they're obviously talented, right? Yes, they've worked very hard, but it's all of these little, every single one of them, they take these little 1% incremental improvements and they stack them every single day. And that's really what separates the great ones from the good ones is they don't miss a day, right? I'm going to get a little bit better today, some way, somehow. I don't care if we got rained out, right? I'm going to get a couple extra reps in or whatever it might be. Um, and your Elon Musk point's a great one, right? There's these serial founders who go around making these incredible companies, not because they're subject matter experts in those particular areas, right? Yeah, they may be geniuses in a lot of different ways, but the team building aspect of that fascinates me, right? Because you want to build rockets or you want to build an electric car or you want, whatever you want to do. Like
Yeah.
you're talking about this really diverse universe of people that you need to pick from to build your team. Right. And they also have to fit your vision and your culture and, sort of the tactical expertise as well. So, how do you guys either approach that from a 76 perspective or look at it from the outside looking in on founder versus team, right? Because that evolves too, right? The founder can drive it almost by himself to a point, and then eventually you've got to be able to delegate and say, now I need 1, 2, 3, 40 people to help me, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, you hear so many cliches about, the best tech doesn't win, it's the best people, right? But I think when you peel it back and you look at the top performers, they self-fulfill. They are constantly thinking of their vision. They have a massive goal in mind, but they can picture it and they can describe it, and yet then they know how in their mind to put the pieces together and they execute. Most people are kind of one or two worlds, right? You're either kind of a dreamer or a doer, an executor, and very rarely do you get the middle ground where you can build the vision and then go execute on it. That's super challenging. And the other trait that you always see across the board, resilience. No one talks about, you come out of that building and you just got kicked in your teeth for the 20th time. And it's like, what's next? How do I win that back? How do I run that down? And it's tough for the athlete because it's so in your face. You go 0 for 4, you shower up, you go into the media room. What happened today? Like you don't know about what's going on in the home life. You don't know what injury they're playing through. You don't know mentally what they're like. But in business, you come out of that meeting and it's what's next and how do I and that's where like the similarities of like you're gonna get knocked down. It's not will you get knocked down, it's how hard will you get knocked down and how you find your way back up. And I think when we're thinking through our philosophy on investing, there's so much around sales that has those traits and characteristics that, like in our opinion, too many investors aren't focused enough on can this founding team sell. And that's everything. That means externally, can you get customers? Internally, can you sell your team on the vision again? You're always telling your story. You're always, and at the end of the day, can you raise capital? So many good
Right.
companies just run out of fuel. They just get to their last dollar, and whether they saw it coming or didn't plan well enough, they weren't able to sell to the next moment to get that next tranche of capital to get them. And oftentimes, a good company, they're going to need it. It's a roller coaster. It's not always up and to the right. It's never up and to the right. And so again, like you've got to be able to sell. You got to be able to sell to all these different constituents and parties. And there's so many traits and characteristics that for us it's pattern recognition. We've seen over 10,000 deals. We see hundreds and hundreds of deals a month. We talk to hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs a month. And it starts to be that pattern recognition of, are these the right types of teams and founders that we want to work with and build with? And when it's successful, it's, I think, as close to you get back to like that championship, like getting to raise the banner and spray the champagne.
Yeah, when you're talking about that many entrepreneurs, right? Like the first thing that pops in mind from a sports analogy is like the golf world, right? You've got all these like solo, and I live sort of in golf headquarters now, so it's been interesting for me coming from a more traditional, sort of league team dynamic, right? Baseball, football, whatever, to now it's sort of like a almost independent contractors that are not part of team. They're their own entities, but they're all over the place, right? And they're just out doing their thing and they're competing and they're playing, and there's like this giant wide end of the funnel. And golf's probably the perfect analogy, right? Because similar to baseball, it's such a game of failure, and you can do everything right and things just still blow up in your face. And there's all this just immense competition and things that are like in your way. But to your point about resilience, and I mean, that's why I always lean on the resilience thing when I'm interviewing people or I'm talking to try to make a decision, right? It's like, tell me about, where you're really screwed up. Like, how did you bounce back from it? Where'd you learn from it? That's hard to do in an interview setting, right? You're interviewing for somebody for a job, or somebody's trying to get you to invest in their company. They're going to give you the glossy version, right? So to be able to peel back those layers of like, okay, yeah, I got like the sanitized version, but now tell me the truth. Like, right? Like, what really happened and how did you really respond in real time? Because it's not pretty, right? It's never pretty.
It's never, but I personally think part of the resilience is taking some of these setbacks, and like we don't really like to use the word failure. Like to us, failure is like you quit and you just pack it all up and say, like,
100%.
you turn your back and say, like, it didn't work, it's never gonna work, I'm not the one, we're not the ones, that's done. You close the door. Otherwise, it's a setback. You and you learn to, you know, figure out how do you keep working with what you have to get to where you want to go. That's just, you know, outworking people, out trying, out hustling, a lot of these soft skills. The challenge for us as investors is, can we underwrite the human? Can we be that talent scout to figure out, in a very finite time, in a vacuum, is Billy the one to entrust with capital and our time, right? It's all of our time, which is just as valuable. But man, it's a blast getting there. It's a lot of fun, and like you said, now doing it in sports is like wild, because it wasn't
Yeah.
always. This is our 26th year. It was not always a sports focused investment company.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, there's a ton. Yeah, I'm gonna avoid going down this rabbit hole, but there's a ton of money getting pumped into the sporting space, and that's a broad umbrella. But when you were talking about, they're sitting there and investing in people and buying the people, underwriting the human being. I use that analogy myself, and you do that. The first thing that comes to mind is the scout that's watched the kid for an entire year or multiple years, and you're not taking, this isn't a first round pick. You're taking them in the 23rd round. And at that point, really all you are betting on is the human being, right? Yes, there's a talent set and there's some development involved, and, there's maybe something that can be refined, but ultimately you're saying, hey, look, 23rd round pick, this kid's going to fail. He's going to see some adversity pretty much on day one for the most part, right? Like he's got an uphill climb. So how's he going to respond to that? Right. And again, that's hard you got to really be embedded. You got to really know the person. You can't go to like a weekend series and say, oh, he'll be okay. He's resilient. Like you got to really get inside those people to to know. I mean, can you think of an example of, you don't have to name names, but either an individual or a company where you were really kind of maybe on the fence on the business model or the calculus behind it from an investment perspective, but then you said, I'm all in on the human, and it either worked out or didn't.
Yeah, you know, a lot of investors flock mentality. They club deals together, as we say, meaning they kind of all pair up. Like, well, if you're in, I'm in, and we'll kind of all do this together. And it just, you're right, you're de-risking, and that works. But also, we've sat down with the founding team, and we know that they've been told 20 times already, we're, you're not for us. It's a pass. We're not going to invest in your, come back once you've had this traction or you've hit these KPIs. And when we sit down with them, and you can already tell, like, they've been passed over 30 times, 40 times, and yet we decide to say yes. That we're either crazy, we either see something that's really smart and that we think we can build with, or we're just flat wrong, and these other investors were right, and that's the game. That's the game we all play. And the other side of the table is we raise capital. While we're an investment company, we have limited partners that believe in our vision, that believe in what we're building and what we're investing in. And so we always talk with founders and try to see eye to eye with them, because the next thing you know, we're raising capital for our next strategy, our next investment fund. And so I can give you spot on, unbelievable success stories of everyone passed over this founder, this founding team, and we were right. And we went all in. And you're right, we were probably betting more on the team than kind of the concept. We've had these moments where everyone kind of passed on the founder, but we saw something. We saw something in the founding team and what they were doing, more so the vision than what they've executed on date or were able to build so far. And we went all in, and we won. We had a really big exit with that team and what they went on to do. And I can give you the other side where, repeat success story. The founders had multiple exits. They wanted to work with us, given our reputation. They came to us very early on, so we got an early look. And we said yes because everything lined up, and it just didn't work. And there's always reasons of, what happened or why this, but, it's never, if it's so obvious and so easy, like anyone would.
Yeah, right. Anybody can do
right?
it.
And so, that's kind of the fun of it.
The nightmare scenario for me is undervalued, or maybe not everything's perfect, but you guys feel it and you still pass. And then they go on and kill it, right? Like the one that got away is my nightmare, right? And you see that when it gets fun in the sports world is when anybody can just go auto draft fantasy football style and pick players based on the rankings, right? The fun part is when you jump up and grab a guy that nobody sees you taking, not because you're trying to make a splash, it's because you believe in your team and you believe in what you've seen and you believe in your philosophy and how they fit and a million different reasons why. Then you're like, okay, let's go. Let's find out if we're right or not, right? Hey, real quick. If you're getting value from the show, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, go ahead and leave a 5-star review while you're at it. It helps more people like you find this podcast, and honestly, that simple form of support, it makes a difference. All right, back to the conversation.
It all comes back to, right, like your craft, what you do, your diligence, your process, how you put them through your paces at 76 Capital. This is what we do. This is how we diligence. This is why we choose. And, sometimes are you trying to go so far against, right? Do you want to be that one that no one saw this talent, but we did, right? Or is it, you think right now people have them as kind of a top tier, top 80, 90%, but they're not the 0.001% as we spoke about, but you think they can get there. Like, that's the other side of it, right? Like, they have with you as the team as the scout with your group backing, with your coaches, with your GM, that you can build around this critical piece. And that's a little bit of the same thing of with our team, with what we can provide, with our guidance, with our help, and our that we can turn this really talented player into the one. And that's and when that happens, right? Same thing. You're kind of like, I saw something, but you saw a lot of understanding your internal resources about what can be built.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head for me is know thyself, right? You've got to know what you're good at. You've got to know what fits for your system. If we're no good at teaching guys how to throw a breaking ball, let's not draft guys who have breaking balls, right? Like whatever it is, let's just lean in on our strengths. And you guys have sort of carved out that niche that's gotten, pretty well defined over the years, I imagine. But you've seen taken a step further, right? So you go initial investment, become part of the organization, part of the portfolio. You've had some others that have had some massive successes that have been acquired, right? Others that didn't make it, So once you get past that first hurdle, like we're in, what's the separator from you when it comes to sort of the high performing portfolio companies versus the ones that maybe struggle a little bit?
Not surprising, execution. Everyone has grandiose visions and they kind of know what to do, but then all the work comes into play. And it always comes down to these goal setting. And can you have this audacious goal, but can you set, the ones that are going to lead up to it? Can you have these wins in place? And you're not getting too high on your one big win. You have one great breakout game. You go 3 for 4. You have 2 home runs and 6 RBIs. What's next? Or are you still, punch drunk from the night before, and the rest of that series is crap? And like you see that and that's not like a sports analogy only. That's in business. That's in life. The successful founders, the successful people in business celebrate the wins and understand what it is to have the success. But then it's right back to work. It's right back in the weight room. It's right back you're in the office first the next day or two, and it's back to, well, what else has to get accomplished, or what else is the next thing? Because otherwise it's retirement. You feel like you're like, all right, I'm done. I called it a day. I've achieved what I've wanted to, or I've been able to call my shot. Otherwise, you have more work to do. And we've seen these teams that hit these great milestones, win a massive customer, and it's like, what's next, or how, right? What else do we have to go and achieve? And they're the ones that continue to do really well.
Yeah, it's a balance. I think it's a balance with athletes. It's a balance with, sort of entrepreneurs. You want to celebrate the wins a little bit, right? Because those are milestones, right? That's OW. Let's pop some bottles and have fun tonight and get back to work tomorrow. But the analogy it's not even an analogy. We would use it all the time in the draft. And look, don't get me wrong. Get every penny that's coming to you, right? If you're taking the draft and negotiate and get your money. But there were kids that would sort of, whether it was the kid or the advisor, the parents, whatever, kind of lose the forest through the trees sometimes, where they're so hung up on, I got drafted, I got to get more money than X, or I got to get above this threshold for a signing bonus. You're like, look, is this about the money, or is this about the ego, or is this about, a goal for you? Because really, you're 18 years old. The goal is the big leagues, right? The goal is way down the road as far as 10, 15 years from now. What are we talking? That money may or may not be here then, right? So it's again, that like, yeah, like, look, let's go celebrate and have a nice dinner. We just got a big bonus, but let's not lose sight of why we're here. And I would imagine you guys get a pretty good feel for that pretty quickly once you're embedded. But that's hard to do when you're assessing it, right? Like, okay, because all you're seeing again is, for the most part, what they want you to see. You can't hide the numbers, but you can hide sort of how you got there sometimes.
Right. I think specifically in our space where companies are raising capital, and it's raised across rounds, typically pre-seed, seed, and then you get into letters A, B, so on, and it happens more than not where companies are so pumped up they raise their round of capital, but they're going to need more capital in 18 or 24 months. And there's a little bit of a mindset of, we're trying to ask through of like, every time from our side, the more capital, we will at some point start to get diluted unless we're continuing to invest more and more and more across these rounds. And so for us, it's, well, can you raise the capital and can you stretch it an extra 6 months? Or maybe you'll be able to achieve more and you'll need to raise less. And there's always these really interesting mindsets. And sometimes teams come to us and they're like, oh, well, it's the Series A and then the B and the C. And we're thinking, it's 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. And sometimes that's okay, but sometimes it doesn't work. And you kind of can equate that to, right? People think they've had something really successful, but two years later, we're kind of right back at it. We're a brink of like, we're not going to go, or we need to do this, or we're onto something new or something else. So that to us is always a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you talked at the beginning about the importance of selling, right? And the difference, I would imagine, is the difference between being able to raise money and the difference between a build a business, something that's sustainable. Right? And there's got to be, understandably, there's got to be so much focus on the capital raise because you need the money to operate. But if it's going, seed ABC, and all your checkpoints, mental checkpoints are capital raise driven, you're kind of taking your ball off to some extent, the operational piece of that. And if you're a small organization, that balance has got to be hard to strike, right? You've got to have, to your point, the visionary and the operator. If you've got those two, you're probably in a pretty good place.
It's one of the trickiest parts of venture. It really is. And that's why I think we're, candidly working with the right investors, having the right people as advisors on your board, having the right people in your camp of, some of the best companies just go out and raise too much at a value that they can't really achieve. And then sometimes these companies get upside down when they're doing really well. They just get over their skis. And there's so many different nuances to the game that play through that, and again, that's sometimes why you do want to work with a founder that's had the successes, because hopefully they don't fall into some of these traps.
You think of contrarian positions you've taken, you personally, when you're saying, either I'm in or I'm out, I don't care what everybody's saying, and how'd that play out for you?
Yeah. I alluded to it earlier. 76 Capital was founded by my partner, Wayne Kimmel. 26 years ago, 99, I was in high school. I know you were about similar. And where Wayne was successful was backing these entrepreneurs, investing across technology. And I know today you said it, like the contrarian position was sports. And it was in 2015 that we just said, this is it. Our job now, we have to go from investing early in technology, but we have to do two things. We need to focus on one specific vertical. We felt like kind of being a generalist in the space wasn't the play for us at that point. And we also felt that maybe there was this large addressable asset class market opportunity that hadn't been disrupted by investors, that hadn't really gone deep with venture capitalists. And we figured it out. Sports, media, entertainment, you can kind of bucket a couple things underneath. And don't get me wrong, Billy, so much has gone our way, so many tailwinds, rule changes, law changes, regulation. But we definitely called a shot. And believe it or not, 10, 11 years ago, we got kicked in the teeth a lot. We got a lot of doors slammed in our face, where a lot of people today, like, oh, that makes sense. I get it. Apollo yesterday announced a $5 billion sports fund. Ares had like all these big names, big banks, big investment groups are raising billions of dollars in the sports space. And that can be on teams and leagues and media rights. We've stayed true to venture and to technology and to the startup space. But what we do really is synergistic with all these other investors. But wow, we really had some dark moments in those first couple of years of people saying that's not investable, that's not an asset class, it's too small. You guys are just missing the play. You need to go back to what you did really well, kind of the first 15 years, and just focus on SaaS or just focus on, healthcare. And it just wasn't us. It just wasn't us anymore at that moment. There's unbelievable investors focused on those verticals, but we saw a couple things and we went at it and we had the resilience as we discussed. And I think it's playing through. And yeah, we've continued to, bump along, and we're by no means perfect, but we have figured enough out that this has really become a massive investment opportunity that we've seen through the last 10 years in our, through our lens.
Did you guys give any consideration to making that pivot when you were getting that criticism? Did you get one punch or like, man, I don't know, maybe we should consider something else?
I think like the founders that we really believe in, that, we will get to those moments of like, all right, people have said no to you. You've heard 20 no's, you've heard 50 no's. We believe in you, but you need to stay on this mission. We believe in what you're doing and where you're going, and it's not going to be easy. And just because we have conviction doesn't mean, but you need to keep going on it. And I think the moment, we left that whiteboard, we left those series of meetings and all the, just the work and the diligence of why we should go into this space, that we had that conviction. We had that founder's mentality of like, come hell or high water, this is where we're either going to die on this hill or we're not, but we're not going to turn back just because, I don't get it. I don't see it. That's nice. Go out of here next. Like, that's okay. Like, so what? Like, it's, you got to be able to, all right, we're going to come back in here and say you were wrong and we were right. And you got to have that kind of arrogance of like, all right, we will come back and tell you were wrong. Because if not, then you are just listening to everyone else, and you're only going to get so far, right? Because you got to be like, what do they know? What do they know?
Yep.
And you just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you've got a sound strategy, it's well thought out. So much of this, right? It's like investing in one-on-one. It's just stay in the game, right? Like just ride the ups and the downs, right? The Warren Buffett, just like, don't, buy when everybody's selling and sell when everybody's buying. Don't be reactive, and I know it's cool for me to think about that vote of confidence aspect of this, right? Because that there's a lot of founders, I would imagine, that doubt does creep in, right? We all have our threshold where eventually you're like, okay, like, she turned me down 97 times. I'm not going to ask her out the 98th time, right? Like, you get a little discouraged, but having people who do this professionally, yeah, the capital and the resources is one thing, but that like cheerleader, right? That coach of like, hey, just stay in the game.
I think, Wayne and I are very fortunate that we're able to kind of play off of each other and work together as partners. And he'll be upset about it, and I'll have to be there, like, let's figure, or I'll be super pissed off, ready to punch a wall, and it's like, calm down, we're gonna go that, and you need that, and you need that across the teams you invest in. You need that in sports. And we need to figure out, you as the GM, us as the investor, like, do you see those dynamics? Does that play well together? Or is this going to be like an explosive locker room of, we're going to give this founding team, $1 million, and it's literally going to explode.
Yep.
Because the CTO is going to get fired, or the CEO is going to turn their back, so on and so forth. You have to get those things. You have to get those things right. No doubt.
So what are some of those red flags that you look for, as you're looking to invest? How do you know? Again, I keep drawing it back to my previous life, but like, this kid cashes $1 million bonus check at 18. I mean, I have a pretty good head on my shoulders. I'd like to think I'd be a good person, but nobody gave me $1 million when I was 18. I don't know how I'd respond, right? So like, how do you know how that's going to go over, or how do you try to assess for it?
What we're able to do really well is in a finite, take the founding team and put them through paces of what they're going to go through. To your point, like, you can take these interview questions, you can tell me about your KPIs. How are you going to achieve it? What are your hires? How are you going to use this capital? Like they're prepared for these, you know, but it's more about the real world of, we're going to go out to eat with them. We're going to go see customers with them. We're going to go talk to employees. We're going to go to talk to past employees. We're going to go talk to figure out if they had founders or other partners or other investors. And we're going to start to challenge them. And that's where you see how they react. That's where you see really how they're going to handle these real situations of they build a product and it has, the bugs, and how are they going to handle that? Are they going to be able to properly handle their capital, their investing, their building of the team? Again, are they going to be able to get customers? Are they going to be able to sell and not just build a great product? But it's our job, and I think we have a really unique process of how we do this in a short amount of time, because that's probably one of the hardest things about a venture capitalist is you don't have a year to figure this out. Oftentimes you have 60 to 90 days. And if it is the hot company, if it's the next billion-dollar idea, well, you're not the only ones they're talking to. You're not the only ones that are looking at that. Maybe we'll put out a term sheet, or maybe there's, $2 million left and they're talking to 20 other investors. They would like to work with you, but they don't want to spend all their time fundraising. They want to go and build. And so you need to make these calls quickly, but effectively. And that's something I think 76 Capital does really well at.
It's a leadership mistake you made early in your career, whether it's in venture or elsewhere, that fundamentally changed you?
I think it often comes down to you think you're doing the right thing at the right time, but it's some version usually around delegation. Either you feel that you're that young buck that's like, I'm going to do everything, and you just grind yourself where to the point of like exhaustion. You just find yourself like, I have more to do, but I literally like, you get sick, right? Like, or you just take on too much. And that's a common trait of a kind of younger person in their career. Or you like, how do you start to build trust and rapport? And I don't think that's like a young mistake, or like, I think that's something as you evolve and you grow, and that's a really mature, you're just able to kind of, okay, right? Like they bumped their knee, but they didn't break their leg, right? It's like a lot of the like things that happen with parenting are in parallel, and kind of until you see some of those things that you're going through with your own kids, it's tough to relay in the business sense. But a lot of it is like, you got to let your kid experience and figure it out, but you obviously don't want your kid to get hurt. And there's so much of that in the business sense of, I can't just sit there and micromanage all day long because I'm not going to get work done. But I want to know what's going on. I want to know where we're headed, and I want to know what's going to be done to the level or even above. And that's where you start to learn these, kind of managerial experiences. And so I think earlier on, you got to, find your way through it by doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the element of experience. There's the element of ego there, right? Like you're young and hard charging and you can do everything. And why would I let somebody else do it, kind of thing? Cause you think that's kind of how you prove yourself. And in reality, you get older and you realize that you're limiting yourself, and you can't scale yourself. And use the startup analogy, you can be a one-man founder, you're going to hit the brick wall. Like it does. Nobody knows when that's going to be necessarily, but it's probably not going to be when you reach all your goals. Right. So then it's too late to smash into the wall and say, hey, I better go get a team around me to help me do this. Right. So it takes the discipline and the thoughtfulness and the tact to be able to go, and the skill to be able to go find people that fit what you're looking to do, that fit the culture, that fit the skill set, all of these things, and do it in a strategic way, and then delegate, to your point. That's a super hard thing for a lot of people to do. There's so much trust involved in that. And even if it's the most talented person in the world, there's always in the back, especially with a lot of high performers, there's like, I'm not sure, I can't do this better. Right. But so that's where you have to be able to say, I might be able to do this better today, but I'm hoping that this person next to me can do it better than to me 6 months from now. So I need to let them, to your point, maybe skin their knee and not break their leg.
You need to remind yourself too that at certain points in your career, you were tasked with something that in the back of your mind, you're like, I can't believe they're asking me to do this and are giving me this trust and this capacity to go execute. How cool. And they have a special moment. And if you don't succeed, well, your career's going the wrong way at that moment. And you got to think back of like, you were entrusted with something that was probably a little a bit above your pay grade, or someone saw something, and you have to be that talent that also sees things in others, or you need to build that team around you that allows you forward to trust. And that's a big piece of that delegation, that we're building a successful team. We're going to let people be the talent they are. We're going to get out of their way.
It's hard to pressure test something if you never put it under actual pressure. Right? I spent a lot of time thinking and doing things like this, where resilience training, stress inoculation, all these things that you can go through these exercise, but if in the back of your mind, you know, it's a practice and not a game, you might not be giving it 100%. You might be at 90%, right? And maybe that last 10% is when the stress actually kicks in for you, right? So knowing kind of you're going full bore, and maybe you don't know it's a practice, right? Maybe it's a simulation, it's a fire drill. There's a lot of analogies of that where, to your point, if you don't trust them to do it, the one time you have to trust them to do it, it's going to be in your throat, just kind of praying that it works. So as you've gotten older and seasoned, you're a grizzled old veteran now, right? What are some of your habits that drive your daily performance, right? Like I found it, I get older and you're like, man, I just can't show and go anymore, right? I gotta be stretching, I gotta be practicing, I gotta be ready to go, get your mind right, get your body right. Like what are some of your sort of your daily habits that get you primed?
I've always been one of, I've never thought I've like achieved the success. To me, there's always more to go do. And anything that I think has come positive in my career has been through hard work. And that comes down to building the relationships and the network. Like that's hard work. That's a piece of the work. And so you're right though, things change and evolve as you move in your career. And so that adaptation of how do you continue to work that hard, but you said it works smarter, and that balance, because now it's most people around, right? It's kind of like family first, but your career needs to provide, and you need to maintain the health, your personal health, so you're there for your family, so you're there for your team at work. And I think that's the juggling that you're constantly doing now, that I'm always working about and thinking through those three things of how can I be my best self, of not working myself into the ground, but being there for my family and supporting, but yet, there's so much to go achieve at work, and you can't just move off of work, because then you won't be able to take care of the others, right? So it needs to all harmonize. And I think that's probably like the biggest thing that you always thinking about, reading, talking to others, finding peers, finding, people more successful than myself, of like, how have you dealt with this type of thing, and having that, being able to pull up in your phone and, right, like, who can I immediately go to that can help me here? And then you need to be there on the other side. When someone is pinging you, you need to be there to answer their call, or you're not going to have that reciprocation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, unfortunately, is one-way street these days. It's very transactional. A lot of people embrace that, whether they realize it or not. And I mean, I know you guys, going back to when I first met you, it was you were operated out of a place of generosity. You wanted to help, you wanted to have a conversation. I mean, this podcast spawned out of, I just have these conversations in my day-to-day life, right? And somebody was like, hey, you should record these. And there's a lot to learn there, right? And I could sit on a train or an airplane and listen to people that I know nothing about. Not that I'm eavesdropping, right? But like, they're talking about things and you're like, there's something to learn here, right? It's business, it's life. It's, my wife's grandfather is 95 years old, right? Like, I'm very concerned for when that generation is gone because of all of that generation has gone through, all of the wisdom that they have because of the world that they lived in during their span. You and I will never be able to like recreate that and those experiences and the things that came from that. So there's always these opportunities to grow if you're looking for it, you know. And I know you guys embrace that, embrace the sports ethos, embrace the teammate, you know, and that's why I think, you know, we've stayed in touch over the years because it just resonates with me. I appreciate it. It can tell it's genuine. And you can also tell with folks when it isn't.
No doubt, and I appreciate you saying that. And I so much people are right. Like everyone now is asking about AI and what will it happen. You're right, and there's so to us there's so much good that will come from AI, and hopefully to the extent of solving cancer and different use cases. But at the end of the day, you know, AI, I have a hard time believing it's going to replicate and have this exchange. And you know, in our couple generations here, like you're not going to get past that. And so hopefully AI can, you know, make that piece even better, give us a lot, you know, some time back, to have that and to get to talk to that 95-year-old about what they've been through. And so there's still going to be the human interaction, the stories and the relationships and the lessons. And I think that's really interesting. Of maybe AI will make that better because it'll give us more of it. Time will tell, but obviously we're constantly. I can't go an hour without saying AI, and it's you're not. It's not less. It's only more and more, and
Right.
and that just shows you where things are and the moment of time we're in.
Well, I like that outlook on it. You know, in my book, that's optimistic because I agree that it's going to be an incredible tool and it's got to clear our plates of a lot of things for better, for worse, you know, depending on what that may be. But it's not going to replace, you know, the human element, empathy, leadership, communication, all these things that I think will be at an all-time high as far as premiums go in like a couple of years. Like, we're not that far away. And my hope is that people sort of see the train coming and realize that all of this stuff that I once had to worry about, I don't have to worry about it so much. So my bandwidth just got freed up. So maybe I'm going to pour into my personal development. Maybe I'm going to listen more. Maybe I'm going to work on my leadership skills or my ability to follow leadership, right? All of sort of the human element that in my mind, I mean, it's a bias, but like that will be the separator. Much like the analytics revolution in sports, it was like you're on the bleeding edge, you've got an advantage. Guess what? Now everybody's pretty much on the same level, right? Like it all catches up for the most part. So now it's about who on your team knows how to leverage that and synthesize that and use it in a way that gets it into the players' hands that actually makes a difference on the field. Not just, hey, look how smart we are. You know, look how complicated and complex our algorithm is. You know, it's how you make it useful. What do you do with that information? So I hope you're right, man. I hope that people lean in.
I'm super curious from your side. I think our you know, specifically in sports, but you can use it in the business sense. Like our team's also going to get lost in the data and the information and start to get overwhelmed, and that's going to be because you've never been able to access so much in such a short amount of time, and you can have every data set on that athlete. And I think that's really got really interesting on the scouting front is the eye test versus what the data is telling you, and I've always believed it has to be a blend. I've never believed like you go one or the other, but you've been there, you've done that. You continue to evaluate and look at talent in the way like none of us do because you've been in that role. But I think that's also going to be an interesting side of AI.
Completely agree. I mean, I think that amazingly, you see it today. There are teams that still, it's a check the box exercise. It's like, I know everybody's doing this. I know it's a tool. We're going to hire a couple people and do it. We're not going to go all in, right? We're not pushing all our chips in. But it's a little bit of a hedge CYA move. And then there's others that just completely go off the reservation and get lost in the weeds, you know, and to your point, like it is all data and they never see a player, right? To use that analogy. And so it's always has to be a blend and they should be bouncing off of each other. Because I mean, AI is going to put that analogy to shame. I mean, there's just going to be more data than we're ever going to know what to do with in our entire lives. And so how do we zoom out and see through the matrix a little bit and pick out the stuff that's actually valuable to us to make my life better? At the end of the day, I want to make my life better. I don't want to be an AI expert or show everybody how smart I am, right? How do I use this to make my life better in whatever way I want to define that? And I'm not smart. I mean, I'll get seduced by it. I'm sure there's all these smart people that are building these platforms and these apps that have all this data that's going to put it in front of you. It's no different than social media, right? You're like, I don't want to be scrolling that stuff, but I look up and I'm like, damn it, I'm doing it again, you know? And like, there's smart people that are designing this stuff to make me do that. So it's gonna be fascinating to see, man. I mean, I know you guys are elbow deep in it, and are very thoughtful about it. So I'm watching from the outside looking in, saying it's curious to see where it goes. And I still think it's going to be about getting the tools in the right hands and with the people that I'd rather have somebody that knows what they want to do with it than knows how to use it, like on day one, if that makes sense, you know? Last question. I'm gonna let you go. You guys lean into the sports stuff. What's a good teammate mean to you?
Everything. You can't win alone. You can't do it on your own. And when you have that special teammate it doesn't matter from the time you're in Pee Wee all the way through college and then into the professional setting, you know what it is to have that person next to you. And I think, again, back to the family, like, you know what it is to have that spouse, that partner that compliments you and makes you better, that, again, you're building like with the kids, right? And like it's that team that when your family's clicking and when things are off, and it affects everything, right? And I think that's a big thing, right? Like the work, the life, it's all connected and it's all gelled, and so when you can kind of hit the paces on all those fronts, everything works in the right direction, and you deal with setback together. And that, to me, like, when you have that teammate, when you've made that right hire, and when you didn't. And I think the best thing is to kind of move off of it, and not try to, because it just spirals the wrong way. And you just start fighting this, like, the ego comes into play, and like, I know I made the right hire, we're at a bad moment and this, that, or I know I'm with the wrong person kind of thing, but I can fix this. And you move off of it and you get it back to where you think you need to be. And you see that in a teammate, no doubt.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the No One Is Watching podcast. If you'd like to support the show, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you're interested in similar content focused on leadership, culture, and high performance, check out nooneiswatching.com. Your time is valuable, so I appreciate you spending some of it with me today. See you next time.